Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Oklahoma Football Live. It is Sunday, September 5th, 2021, the day after the first weekend of college football. Thanks for joining. As always, my name is Jason Ray. Um, we have some stuff to talk about, and something specifically that I'm calling upon further review. And really, kind of the idea around this, guys, is every single Sunday after a football game, after an Oklahoma football game, what we'll do is we'll go live again. Obviously, we'll have the post game show immediately following, but upon further review, is really just an idea that I had for us to really just talk about. Everything Oklahoma football related from the weekend, and I think initially there's a lot of knee jerk reactions, good and bad, immediately following the game. But upon further review, gives us, as as fans, as media, as people that cover Oklahoma, as people that watch Oklahoma, whatever it might be, it allows us to take a little bit of a deep breath, take a foot off the ledge, so to speak, and really just kind of take everything in perspective. I know that there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of knee-jerk reaction overall, and I think we want to take a lot of that into account, and really understand and talk about everything that happened over the weekend, and specifically that game. So obviously, I believe that there's a lot of people that were frustrated with the performance, and I was one of them. But I think as I look back, there was a lot of things that happened on Saturday that I believe are very correctable things that Oklahoma will have the opportunity to improve upon, and then we'll get to that. But I think more so than anything, I think the concern that I would have really coming away from that game was, again, there's another instance, and this has been not only prevalent during Bob Stoops' tenure, but it's been more and more prevalent under Lincoln Riley's tenure. It is really the lack of ability to close teams out. When they have the opportunity, there's a lot of complacency, whether it be being ready for the game, whether it be going on cruise control after Oklahoma has a big lead, whatever that might be. I think it's very concerning just overall in the program that they have not completely been able to develop that killer instinct. And I think from my perspective, it's something that starts from the top. I think it starts at Lincoln Riley's level and Bob Stoops' level as well when he was here. And he talked about it on several occasions that Oklahoma, you don't have the ability to just lay your helmet out there. You've got to go do it, in which Oklahoma was very inconsistent in doing it, maybe more so than they have in the past. But it really, for me, watching that game from beginning to end, it was very reminiscent of Army a few years ago. It was very reminiscent of Kansas State last year. It was very reminiscent of, there's been some Texas games where Oklahoma's been a fairly heavy favorite going into the game. And it's something that just, Oklahoma was not able to sustain that success for a large period of time. And, I know there was some discussion, and even Lincoln Riley talked about it afterwards, in terms of his press conference about coaching better, playing better, and all of that, and being ready to play. I think the ready to play thing is a little bit more mind-boggling from my perspective, guys. I think and I know that you're not able to get up for every single game as a player, and I get that. Every single I've heard many coaches kind of talk about this, that kids will get up for about 7 out of 10 games, meaning they'll be extremely excited, ready to play for, like I said, for 7 out of those 10 games. Now, how do you play on the other 3 that you're not, not at your best, that you're not focused and ready to go? I find it very hard to believe. And just coming in, and specifically you guys that are younger, if anybody coaches, any parents that you have, any parents that we have out there, it's very understanding exactly how long of an off season college football has for these kids to come in to a game that they haven't played in 8 months. Remember, the last game, and I don't remember the date of that game, but it was the first week in January. So these kids haven't played a game in 8 months, and they're not mentally prepared or physically prepared and ready to go. I can't, that's the part I can't get behind. So anyways, you're really just kind of thinking through this, you know, last night and today a little bit in looking at the trajectory of this team. I think the things that you saw on the field Saturday, really just in terms of the inconsistent play, are all things that are correctable. They're things that these kids could be coached, coached harder on, coached better on, in terms of, being able to maintain that consistency throughout the course of the game. There's some things that we typically that we didn't see, that we saw, that we didn't expect that we would see. Right? I mean, we saw Rattler being, forcing the ball in the coverage. We saw him being inaccurate. That's something that we didn't see early on last year. It's something that he cut out. He should have had 3 interceptions in the game. So I think that's one thing to think about from the inconsistency perspective. And there were some times where, he was solid. I believe 30 out of 39. That's good, when you look at the stat sheet. But I think that we all kind of take away some of the mistakes, and that's certainly something that he can correct. He did it last year, and so he can obviously do that again this year. The offensive line, that's something, again, almost every single year Oklahoma struggles at the gate. Just in terms of that offensive line, and it usually takes them a little bit to kind of, solidify themselves on which are the 5 right guys that Bedenbaugh wants. So I don't think it's an issue of talent. If Oklahoma was struggling, if it just looked like, my gosh, they just don't have the talent. I thought that they were more. I thought that they were better than this, and they're just not there. That wasn't the case. Open field tackling. A lot of things are very correctable, and I think things that we will see them get much better at as the season grows on. And I think the one thing that I love, I think I've told you guys, I'm a coach. Different sport, obviously, but I'm a coach. One of the things that I love the most is seeing a lot of these kids improve and get better through the course of the year. So I think those of you that feel, this season a wash, Oklahoma can't win a Big 12 championship, they can't get back to the playoffs, they can't play for a national championship, I think that's too early to kind of hit that lever. I think there's some things to be obviously concerned about, which the coaches are as well. And I think everyone talked about, how better they can play and how more consistent they can play. I think, which again, this kind of lends to my point on the culture of, not necessarily always being ready. And I don't know why that is, but they're not consistently being ready to play. It points to the fact that when they wanted to, the defensive line is a perfect example. When they wanted to, there was a period within the second and third quarter, and even a little bit in the first quarter, where they were absolutely dominant and they were unblockable. I mean, so much to the fact that they almost knocked. They did knock him out of the game, Michael Pratt, for one play, and he was limping around, and he was obviously getting beat up, but that consistency wasn't there, throughout the game. So I think those are things that Oklahoma can shore up, and Oklahoma can get better at. But I think like I said, one of the things that, and I don't know that this is something specifically that can get fixed in one season, but something that Riley and the coaches and the players need to take some accountability for, just in terms of being able to finish games off, being ready to play, no matter if they're playing, Western Carolina or they're playing Texas. They've got to be ready to play and focus, and don't think anybody can get beat on any given day. I think throughout the weekend thus far, we've seen 6 FCS teams beat 6 FBS teams, and 2 of those FBS teams were from Power 5 conferences. One was the SEC, and the other one was the Pac-12. And a good team. When you look at Washington, a lot of people picked Washington to make it to a Pac-12 championship, and then they lose the initial game of the year to Montana, I believe it was last night. So, these things can happen. There's a lot more parity in the college football game than there has been in quite some time, and I think that we saw that. So those are the things. Like I said, don't be don't get too alarmed on this. It's just one game. Don't overreact. I think is the message that I would give, and that's really just the way I feel as looking at this. These are kids that can get much better, but I think the focus of being ready to play and always being there, just knowing that anybody can beat you at any given time. So here's some positives that I would take away from the game that a lot of people maybe not think about. This is a game over the last few years that Oklahoma would lose. They were things were snowballing very, very quickly yesterday. They were obviously up 37-13, and the second half was horrible. They couldn't get stops. They couldn't score. They couldn't it was just a snowball effect there in the fourth quarter, and they found a way to win. So I know a lot of you watching it made it seem like it was made it seem like it was a loss. They played so poorly. So I think that's one thing to take away from it. This team, the teams of the past would have lost this game. Look at Kansas State last year. Look at Iowa State. Look at some of these other games, that they've had in the past. So I think that's one thing to take away from it. It wasn't a loss, and I think it'll be interesting to see where Oklahoma's ranked. I still think that they're a top 5 team right now. So all the goals are still out there in front of everyone. So I think that's one thing that you should take away from this as a positive in watching this game, and then understand that they've got 2 weeks of practice to get ready as the competition gets a little tougher. When you look at Western Carolina, obviously they're not going to learn a whole lot more from Oklahoma than you did last year. I mean, than you did this past week. I think there's certain things that you can see and whether or not they're getting better. Are we covering better in the secondary? Are we getting constant pressure? Within the defensive line. Are we tackling in open space? Is Spencer Rattler forcing the ball into any kind of coverage? Is he floating back a little bit? So some of those things that you can see as well. So and I think the other thing is to take into consideration that Oklahoma traditionally has a long history of struggling on in season openers, and I did a little bit of research in this, and I posted this on, and I tweeted this out, and if you guys aren't following me, please follow me at JasonRay1. That's my handle. I have it's Oklahoma. It's the voice of Oklahoma football is my kind of tagline, but that's my Twitter handle. So come follow me. I'll definitely follow you guys back. So one of the things that I tweeted out earlier today was, what do the years 1977, 1985, 2001, and 2004, 2006, 2010, 2012, and 2016 all have in common? And we'll go through those specifically. These are all areas where Oklahoma has struggled tremendously early on. So I'll go through these, and then maybe that gives everybody a little bit of solace upon further review, just knowing that Oklahoma's had a history of struggling in some of these games, and they've bounced back really well, in a lot of these seasons. So the first one was in 1977. Oklahoma won over a very, very bad Vanderbilt team, 25-23. Oklahoma went on to win the Big 8 championship. 1985, they struggled here. This is a Lou Holtz coach Minnesota team, barely beating Minnesota 13-7. Oklahoma went on to win the national championship. So I think there was a lot of thoughts just looking at that this is a team. There's no way that this team can come back and win, even compete for a national championship. So the show, it has been done. in 1985, they actually not only competed, but they won the national championship as well. 2001, I think you guys obviously remember that year, where Oklahoma didn't win a national championship or didn't win a Big 12 championship that year. They did go on and finish 11-2, and they had a big struggle against North Carolina. And if you guys remember, Oklahoma got off to a big start in that game and sort of just faltered down the stretch as well. 2004, Oklahoma 40-24 over a 9-3 Bowling Green. You would kind of look similarly at a game like this versus Bowling Green. It was a non-Power 5 team. And if you guys remember, Oklahoma won the Big 12 championship and played in the national championship game that year. And then just more of the same, in some of the bad teams that Oklahoma, has played and barely won. 24-17 over a bad UAB team. 2006, Oklahoma went on to win the Big 12 championship. 2010, Utah State was the one initially that I remembered, me personally, out of all of these, on how bad they struggle, and just kind of sitting there, I was like, wow. That team went on to win the Big 12 championship as well. So 2012, that was I'm sorry, I forgot to put in the graphic. Oh, that was over UTEP, 3-9 UTEP, 24-7. Just a really, really bad team. And so when you think about this team, and then the last one was in 2016 when Oklahoma actually lost to Houston, and then a couple of games later lost to Ohio State, but reeled off a ton of wins in a row. I think nine straight wins to finish the season and win the Big 12 championship. So there's a lot of different examples here of Oklahoma teams that have struggled early on in the opener and bounced back and played really well and won national championships, and played in the national championship game. So all the goals that Oklahoma had in front of them are still there. It would have been catastrophic should Oklahoma have lost. But I think the one thing to take away from this is, yes, Oklahoma struggled. Yes, Oklahoma did not play well. They played abysmal at times. But the fact is that they won the game, and not only that, but not only did they win the game, but they have an opportunity to improve and grow, and they have a little bit of schedule here early on that that allows them to improve. It allows them to play better, allows them to get better, improve on the field. So I think I think that's one thing to take into consideration. And another thing here is that the schedule does progressively get better, but a lot of these games are winnable, obviously, at home early on. You've got Western Carolina, then it's a little bit tougher with Nebraska, then it's a little bit tougher with West Virginia. Then they go on the road for the first time at Kansas State, which is a little bit tougher. And then they go to Texas, which, are not go to Texas, but they have Texas and Dallas, so which is could be one of the tougher games of the year. Obviously, they looked pretty impressive yesterday against Louisiana. So a lot of these things can go in a much more positive way. So I definitely agree, absolutely, that Oklahoma can get better. So let's go to some of your comments and questions here, and we'll take those as far as you guys have them, and I'll address anything that you guys want to address. Any questions at all about anything that we saw yesterday, and I'll give my perspective. I feel like I'm even in terms of expecting a lot out of this team, but also being very optimistic on what they could be and what could come from this as well. So thanks, everybody. So Cameron, thanks for joining. I appreciate you, brother. Let's see. So Ryan, please tell me why I shouldn't be suicidal. First of all, no one should be suicidal. I hope this is tongue in cheek, but no one should be suicidal over a football game. I'm the biggest fan in the world and the biggest supporter of Oklahoma and cover, and this is my livelihood. But no one should be suicidal. They played a mediocre American Conference team and barely held on for a win. For the win. So I think everything that I said before. Obviously, we know that Oklahoma played really bad. They couldn't have played worse at times. But the big thing to take away is they came away with a win. If they wouldn't have won this game, then I think I think it would obviously have been catastrophic. But the fact that they won this game is obviously something that's very positive. The fact that they have so many things to take away from this game, and I think from a coaching perspective, this is one aspect that I have a little bit of experience on. Is when you have a season opener or we have an opening game where you just play flawlessly, and maybe there or you don't play a team that's as tough, and you mask some situations that might not be there, then you lose that opportunity to coach these kids up and know exactly where you went wrong. They do have tons and tons of coachable moments that they can take in there with the team this year, or this week, I should say. All these fans say, "Oh, you won't do well with," and Spencer sucks is getting on my nerves. So I think let me address that a little bit, Cameron. Thanks for that comment. I've seen a lot of that on social media that Oklahoma just needs to move away from Spencer Rattler and go with Caleb Williams. I could not be further from the truth. I mean, yes, he made some bad decisions. Let's understand that, and yes, but he was still 30 of 39 for one. Number two, he threw the ball in the coverage. He was floating back a little bit, but Caleb Williams has still yet to throw a collegiate pass. So let's let. I mean, I think all of us were on the Spencer Rattler bandwagon, and he was a Heisman favorite. He was going to be a number one pick, or at least a top 5 pick, and he has one bad game. And so let's let it play out. If this is consistently what we see this year out of Spencer Rattler, then maybe there's a different question, or maybe it's a different discussion at that point. But but I think it's something that we shouldn't worry too heavily about. I fully expect him to improve and get much better. Thanks for the question. Where was Drake? I think COVID protocol. I don't know necessarily if he had COVID himself or if it was contact tracing. But I think I think he was just he's just out this week. I think we should expect him back from everything that I heard. I don't know when he'll be cleared. I haven't heard that, but I do know that it was due to contact tracing or COVID itself. Jay, thanks for the comment. I always wanted Caleb Williams over Rattler. I mean, I think it's just hard to if you have a track record, or if you have a history, for these first few games, and if Rattler continues to struggle and make bad decisions, and all that, then maybe you look at that. But I think right now, then it's a no-brainer that Spencer Rattler is your quarterback, and he's not really, it's not really one of those. It's not really one of those situations where Oklahoma's even entertaining any kind of change. It'll be Caleb Williams' team next year, but I think as the season goes on, I think a lot of people will realize how much Rattler has improved, and he will. It'll be a much better performance next week, and I expect the rest of the year as well. So let's see here. So must have forgotten about Kyler Murray and company trying to give the game away to Texas Tech. Yeah, I think that's a good point. I don't know if I don't know necessarily if it was worse than. I think it was worse than Tulane, but he had those 2 quick interceptions early on, and he came back and played well after that. So yeah, I don't know if that's I don't know if I would say if it was worse or better, and whatever. But in terms of equal defense, I think Tulane and Texas Tech are probably on the same level. But again, I think that's the thing. Let's not overreact too much to one game. Let's try not to do that. Ryan, Kyler didn't win a playoff game though. If that's the goal, then Kyler's standard isn't enough. So I think so. That's where I'll challenge us just a little bit as we're thinking about this. And I know I never dreamed that Oklahoma would give up 35 points in this game. I my thought was if Oklahoma gives up more than about 17 points, I think there's some concern about the defense. Not time to give up, but some concern. And the fact that they gave up 35 is deeply concerning. However, it's nothing. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I don't think it's anything that that Oklahoma fans think that it's not correctable. It's something that's absolutely correctable, and I think they can correct it. It's just if you guys watched the Kansas State game last year, you remember in that game how they had receivers. Kansas State had receivers just running wide open throughout the game, and it was very similar here, and they got that corrected. So I think these are things that will get corrected, and I say that to say Kyler's standard is enough. I think that standard, that Baker Mayfield standard, you can't get much better than what they put together. So, I don't know if Oklahoma's in a position where, you're averaging, and obviously I know they had 40 points, so they're not quite 50, but, in that era, I think Kyler's team averaged about 49 points a game. I know that some of those Baker teams averaging like 46, 47 points a game. If Oklahoma can't win a national championship scoring 47, 49 points a game, then they're not going to win one. That's just the bottom line. If they can't get to a position where they can consistently play better defense, then they're just not going to win. They're not going to win a national championship. They may not have the players to do so. Now, like I said, that remains to be seen. We'll see how this goes the rest of the year. If they give up 24, 28 points against Nebraska, then now we're saying this is more of a trend than just kind of an anomaly of one game. Like I never overreact too much on the very first game, on a high or on a low. So I think one thing to remember is I believe it was the 2009 season where one of the 2008, I should say, one of the most impressive opening games, and this was, I believe this is Sam Bradford's freshman year. 2007, when Oklahoma beat North Texas, I think something to the tune of 79-10 to begin the season, and I think we looked at that and said that was one of the most impressive opening game performances that we've ever seen. That team went on to lose a couple of games in the regular season. They did win a Big 12 championship, but they lost a game to Colorado and struggled against Iowa State. So that's a team that struggled, later in the season. So I think if Oklahoma was to struggle, you would like to see it in this game, and then they can move forward. Ryan comment, they do this at least 2 or 3 times a season. It's a discipline issue that starts with the coaches. I couldn't agree more. I think this is the one area that, like I said early on, other than this is the thing that I would concern myself with more than anything. I wrote an article for Last Word on College Football, and this was earlier in the spring, and talked about some of the key components for Oklahoma being able to, to win a national championship or to at least win a playoff game this year. And I think it comes down to that. I think it comes down to being able to hold the lead and being ready to play every single game. Like I said, I mentioned in the open, there's been 4 or 5 games over the last couple of years that Oklahoma has struggled in games that they're much better than the other team. I think if you look at it, some of those teams that Oklahoma has played over the last 5-10 years that are when Oklahoma and Texas are equal, when they've played Oklahoma State, when they've played some of these teams that for whatever reason have their full attention, they come out and dominate and play playoff level football. But for whatever reason it is, there's some of these games where either number one, they're not ready to play, or number two, consistently throughout the season or throughout the game, they don't play. Kansas State last year, Texas last year, Iowa State in the Big 12 championship game, where they had a big lead and they had to hold on to win. So there's so many different areas that you can point to, and I don't know that I think it's a collective thing. I don't know that it's just the players. It's not. I don't know that it's just the upperclassmen. I don't know that it's just the coaching staff. I don't know that it's just Riley because it happened with Stoops as well. Um, so I think so I think it's something that has to be at the forefront of these coaches, these players, and this is where you would like to see some better leadership on the team. And I think the one thing that I will agree with some people about Rattlers, I'm not ready to pull him. I don't think I mean, that's even um, anywhere near the thought right now. But I think that's something the leadership aspect of the team, you know, on offense and defense. But you look for him. So I think that's where I saw him fall short just a little bit. Yesterday was the leadership aspect, as he needs to be much better. At leading the team, and much better, when things are going wrong. He goes to the sideline and pumps them up, and tells them, we're going to go get them next time, like those type of rah things that you would expect from a leader, specifically at the quarterback position. So that's one area that I do see that he absolutely needs to get better and improve, no doubt. Sooner Thrawn, thanks for coming in. You're a regular. I appreciate you, man. People freak out about this, really, unless your name is Alabama. Most teams had issues yesterday. Yeah, no, I think that's a good point, and that's one of the things that I was going to point out is Alabama was dominant, obviously, but when you look at a team like Clemson, you could see how bad they struggle on the offensive line and really the receiver position. Georgia as well, they struggled at the receiver side. Now, I know that both of those are two of the best defenses that you'll see in the country, but neither one of them scored an offensive touchdown. Obviously, Clemson didn't with the 3 points, and then Georgia had that pick six. So, neither one of those that were able to put the ball in the end zone. Ohio State gave up 31 points to Minnesota, and that's with their running back getting hurt there in the third quarter. So a lot of these teams have some of the same problems. Yes, Oklahoma played worse than Clemson or Georgia or even Ohio State, and I think that will be indicative when the next AP poll comes out. I would fully expect Oklahoma to be. They're not going to fall out of the top five. I would say either 4 or 5. I think at this point. So yeah, I think there's a lot of teams that struggle. Look at Iowa State. Iowa State is a trendy pick to win the Big 12, even win the Big 12 championship, and some people even have them going to the playoff. I've seen that they struggled immensely with an FCS team yesterday. Not that Oklahoma State has any, not that their trajectory is even a New Year's Six game this year, but they had to hold on for dear life to beat an FCS team. We talked about Washington over Montana. Some of these, there's just a much better competitive balance. I think this year than I think we will see. I believe there was like 6 or 7 top 25 teams that lost. So I think we'll continue to see that, and obviously teams will get better from game to game, without a doubt. Jay Jones, I knew the line will be a work in progress, but the defense was a bigger disappointment than Rattler's performance. Yeah, I think that's fair, Jay. I would agree. I think the biggest concern for me is the coverage in the secondary and the open field tackling, where it was really just bad. I thought the defensive line play was pretty good. I thought at times they were unblockable, and at times they just kind of I think they just kind of went through the motions. I think one thing that you might see is that you might see they exactly what Alex Grinch said is what they did. They were shuffling kids in and out of there every single play. There was 4 or 5 different guys, and so I think what you'll see is they'll probably settle. Obviously, it's not going to matter against Western Carolina, but you're going to see. I think you're going to see them settle on maybe a not playing as many people, at the specifically on the defensive line and at the linebacker position. I think one thing to keep in mind is individually, I thought Isaiah Thomas and Nick Benito were excellent. I was a little I was a little underwhelmed at pairing on Winfrey, and I think there was some times that he was explosive, but there was times where he looked a little bit like he was last year. So I think the consistency there has to be there. I thought when you look at the linebacker position, I thought Brian Asamoah was horrible. I thought he was consistently out of position. He made a lot of mental errors. He missed some tackles in the open field. So I think it remains to be seen whether we see a little bit more Danny Stutzman there in the middle. With him, it was really surprising. A guy like him that had played so much that, he just seemed to be pretty out of position throughout the game. There was, the running back catching the ball out of the backfield was pretty wide open throughout the game. Specifically early. The tight end over the middle was pretty bad, and I don't know if that's more of kind of the nickel or more, middle linebacker situation at the mic and the wheel. So I think those are some guys that I was really disappointed in, just seeing how how bad that they played. I fully expect them to figure it out. Cameron, I think they have traditionally, maybe struggled a little early on. I think they've got it. They've got it. I think they've gotten better as the season goes on. So would fully expect that to be the case now. They need to get better sooner than later, I think, to get that consistency overall. So I think that will happen, without a doubt. If a QB throws technically 3, he needs to sit the game. Just appreciate the comment, Jay, and I hear what you're saying. I just disagree. I mean, I think he had a bad game. I think one, if it's consistent, if it's something that we see consistently, then yeah, I might be on board. Not after one game. I can't see. I just can't see that happening. The standard has been is there, and they need to elevate their game to the previous standard hasn't been there as well. Heard the coach is taking a moral victory from this game to say a win is a win. I mean, I think that's just what you kind of have to say. As a coach, and thinking about that, I think what you see behind closed doors is much different than what you're going to see from Riley in terms of what he's going to say to the media. He is he's a very close to the cuff type of coach. I think, I don't necessarily think, and I could be way off. I don't know that he's, that they're being soft, or that they're not holding them accountable. I just think Riley is very close. A lot of coach speak that you get from him, but behind closed doors, I would expect it to be much different. And yes, I feel like the struggle is there, but I think the proof is in what we're going to see next. Absolutely. I feel like, from Brandon, thanks for the question, Brandon, the comment, I should say. I really feel like missing Andrew Ram hurt the continuity of the offensive line. So first off, kind of talk about Andrew Ram. Yeah, I think they were much better when Andrew Ram got in the game. I think you guys know that he was part of COVID protocol, so he couldn't be. So he was not a part of the practice at all this week. So obviously you can't really start a kid like that. But I think he was a guy where when you saw him get inserted to the game, they were a little bit better on the offensive line, and I think he's probably better than Conjal. I think one of the things that was really surprising to me is I think Marquise Hayes was pretty poor at the left guard position. And just the run blocking in total for the game was poor. But it's not uncommon to what we've seen in some of these offensive lines early on in the season. So we'll give them the benefit of the doubt until we get further in the season. If they're still struggling to run the football, I think we will that will be obviously more of a concern. On a positive note, I thought Kennedy Brooks was really, really good. I don't know that Eric Gray was bad per se, but I think Kennedy Brooks looked better, looked like the more seasoned running back, just in terms of patience, finding the hole, and I think Eric Gray was a little bit impatient. I think trying to run, really running harder, and and Kennedy Brooks being a little bit more patient. So. Yep, players need to be called out. Absolutely, there has to be some accountability. What whatsoever. Definitely. Lost 27. Actually, it was 21-3 in the second half. But your point is made. Struggled. Took a little bit of a step back, I think. But let's see. Um, let's see how it goes. Um, let's see how they get better. Um, what is the most disappointing in the coach speak reaction by the coaches? Riley and Grinch didn't say we all been reading the poison and taking the. So I think that's one point. OU7 Nats. Thanks for joining in. Thanks for the comment. I think one of the things that I think that we have seen here in the first week is I think that they felt like they could go. They put in work in practice. They could go just kind of lay their helmet out there and go play. I don't know. Again, it's just a lot of unanswered questions right now, and what kind of went into that performance. Are they not as good as I think some of us gave them credit for? Did the change of scenery in terms of playing at home versus being ready to go on the road? Did that change anything? Is it that they're reading their press clippings a little bit more, hearing these kids hear these things. These kids hear ESPN. They hear people talking about how good they are. Did they just think, oh, I mean, we're this good? We'll just roll. Um, so I think that's interesting to see, as well, to see what that looks like going forward. Did they read their press clippings a little bit too much? Without a doubt, that could be something that's happening. Yep, Iowa State wins 16-10. Washington lost to Montana. Um, West Virginia lost. Oregon barely beat Fresno. Yeah, I think there's just a lot of things that happen early on in the season, and these teams progressively get better. But the balance of power is a little bit better than it's been in the past, and some of these other teams are catching up. And that's not an excuse, I don't think, but I think it's just something where some of these teams will struggle early on, and it's not a time to give up. Teams can get better. There was a mention about Ohio State a few years ago, how they lost to a pretty bad Virginia Tech team to start the season, and they just what did they do? They constantly got better. They even went through some injuries. They had their third team. Cardell Jones was their third team, um, their third team quarterback, uh, and they went on to win the national championship with him. They beat Alabama, and then I believe they beat Oregon in the national championship game. So they got better, and it's certainly something that can happen. It's not out of the realm of possibilities for teams and players to improve. It happens every single week, every single year. One of the things I love about sports is these kids have the opportunity and will get better. Definitely. Yeah, Cameron, Oklahoma did struggle with Oklahoma State, 12-7 win in 2000. So even that team, they struggled at times, and then part of that had to do with Heupel's injury. But they struggled, with games. They struggled against Texas A&M. Obviously, that's a good team, but I think Oklahoma State is a good example. That Oklahoma State team was not good at all that year. I think that was like a 3-9 or a 4-8 team. So yeah, 12-7. Ryan, I think they're not equal teams. I think I would venture a guess, and I think we'll see how the rest of the season plays out, obviously, but I think I would put that Tulane team in terms of being better than that Oklahoma State team of 2000. That Oklahoma State team was not very good. Um, and then and I'm just going to do some research on that, on that 2000 team while we're talking for Oklahoma State. But yeah, that was a team that wasn't very talented at all, and Oklahoma had to struggle um, to win that game. Absolutely. So I think that is something that remains to be seen in terms of what is this going to how is this going to um, manifest itself. Definitely. So so yeah. So let me go through some of these questions. Let me get to while we're here. Let me look at that 2000 um, Oklahoma State team because I'm curious now. I can't remember exactly how they finished. So let's see. So Oklahoma State, yeah, 3-7. I'm sorry, 3-8. So yeah, that wasn't a strong team. I think that Tulane is a much better team than that team. Absolutely, absolutely agree. Tulane absolutely is not a bad team. Why does everyone say it's a bad team? St. Helena isn't a bad team. Look at their record last year in the American. So yeah, 6-6. So if you look at that historically, now, I don't, and it's not anything. So let's put this in perspective on what Tulane is. Last year they were 6-6. They were about 10 points away from being 9-3 in an American only conference schedule. So I think, yes, they're not a great team. They're probably, I would say, maybe on Kansas State's level, maybe a little bit not quite as good as Kansas State, maybe like, on Baylor's level, in terms of talent. So I think, it's not, they're not a great team by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not a pushover type of team. So let's see, let's wait. Let's not say that they're a terrible team right now. Let's wait and see how this season keeps going for Tulane and see what I'm interested. They play, in a few weeks. They host Ole Miss, so hopefully they'll be back in New Orleans by then. Let's see what happens. Let's not write the season. Let's not write the book before the chapters are ready. Let's see. OSU almost lost to Mississippi. Yeah, good point. Good point. Yeah, K State's going to be tough. So I think that's, like I said when I mentioned, talking about the schedule. I think it gets tougher. I think the good thing for is they should certainly have that game scheduled, without a doubt. But I think you have a I think you have a situation where if Oklahoma's not ready to play, then they're going to get beat again, which would be an awful sight to see Oklahoma lose 3 straight years to Kansas State. But they've got to improve and got to be ready. Absolutely. Yeah, honestly, Cameron, I think that was one of the more disappointing things to see watching that game is how good Texas looked. And I was, excuse me, when Steve Sarkisian was hired, I was a little bit concerned with the hire because I thought it was a really good hire. Thought it would take some time to him to develop their culture, but yeah, they beat Louisiana fairly easily. Hudson Card looked pretty good. Defense looked pretty sound. So, let's see with them. I'm a firm believer that let's not over exaggerate any win or loss early on in the season. Let's see a few games put together and see what some of these people look like. So let's. So I'm just looking at some of the questions here. Okay, so do you think that our defense will improve? I saw a lot of the secondary 10 yards away from the receiver, and that had me worried we look bad. Yeah, I think that one of the things that I came away with was just the coverage in the back end that was soft at times, and just wasn't as strong as you would hope to see. So I think we have a lot of data points over the last 3 years under Grinch, the last 2 years under Grinch that shows us how much they've improved. They've gotten better each and every year. So there's no reason to think that this won't be the case as well. They played horribly against Kansas State. We've talked about that. Lost, gave up 38 points in that game, 38-35. They played much. I mean, just progressively the next week, they played better against Iowa State. Still wasn't great, but they played much better. They played even more better. Even more so, they improved against Texas. Obviously, they had trouble finishing that game defensively, but then after that, they were really consistent the last half of the year. So let's hope that this improves a little bit more, a little bit quicker this year. But they've got the talent. I firmly believe that they have the talent there. So let's see. I think having until the defensive backs can grow and get comfortable and get some confidence, Oklahoma's going to rely on that front seven a little bit more to get pressure and do some of those things that alleviate some of that concern out of the secondary. Let's see. Allie, Rattler's the second best quarterback on the team, but Rattler's more experienced, knows all the plays. Rattler, I think, maybe getting a big head, especially with the so the NIL is interesting. This was a discussion my father and I had while watching the game, and he felt pretty strongly that that reading the press clippings and people worrying about NIL was a deterrent for Oklahoma in this game, specifically Rattler. I don't know. It's again another thing that some of these kids have. Obviously, they have other things on their mind from time to time, but let's see. Let's look at a few games here. There was some NIL stuff, maybe some thinking about that too much, and it could be, but and I don't know. We'll just have to see. We'll just have to see what happens. So, Ryan, thanks for all the comments. I know that there's some getting a little bit of a beating here, but let's yeah. So like I said, let's see. Let's not overreact too much. Let's look and see if we see improvement from week to week. I think the good thing about this is they have a couple of weeks to get better. This week in practice that then you'd like to see. And there's some, like I said, there's some areas where you're not going to be able to see a whole lot of improvement, and then there's some areas where you absolutely will be able to see improvement. Just from a schematic perspective against Western Carolina, and then you have Nebraska, a team. Obviously that's not great, but it's still, from an athlete perspective, they got a pretty good defensive line. So I think it'll be interesting to see how well the offensive line plays against them. Are they able to open up some holes, or is it still a consistent struggle? I think that will be thing. Blake, you think Tulane going to win more games when they are running that offense against OU? You think Alex Grinch should put the number one starters on defense the whole game? So Blake, good questions here. So initially, I think Oklahoma was a little bit surprised at the game plan and just exactly what Tulane did. There wasn't a lot of spread option attack. So given the fact that there was a new offensive coordinator, Chip Long, that came over, I don't think that Oklahoma exactly knew what to expect. They got hit in the mouth early, then they reacted, and then they played much better. As we mentioned, Tulane went up and down the field, got those 14 points the first two possessions of the game, and then Oklahoma settled in the second quarter, and then halfway through the third quarter, and then again I think the bottom fell out. Don't know if it was they lost their focus or whatever it was, but so I think that's part of the first one, and the second one. No, you can't keep your number one starters in there the whole time. You've got to be able to you've got to be able to sub those guys in, especially in the defensive line. Now, I know that they talked about playing 8 guys are on the defensive line. I think maybe that was a little too much. So I think they might probably scale that back a little bit in terms of that substitution pattern. But I think there was some things that I'd heard, like some of those kids maybe weren't as ready to play as maybe they thought. And something to think about, guys, is I go back to one thing that I remembered hearing in the '90s under the the Blake and the Schnellenberger years is a guy named Eric Moore. You guys remember him? People that followed Oklahoma that year. You think this is bad? Remember back to where Oklahoma was in the '90s. But anyways, a guy like Eric Moore, they said he was lights out in practice. He would play extremely well. But when the lights came on, when it was time to play, he just struggled. And there are kids that are like that they practice really well, but then when it comes to play the game, then they just struggle. Whether it's there's too much stress, or not all the fans, or whatever comes with that makes kids struggle. Once the game starts, I think that happens from time to time. So and that might be the case for some of those kids that they felt like maybe weren't completely ready. So so I think we'll see less. They won't keep the number one starters in the whole time, but I think we'll see less substitution for sure. The decision making. I think that's one thing that that Lincoln Riley talked a lot about. His decision making has been better through practice, and he said, only threw a handful of interceptions through practice, but I think he has a tendency sometimes of wanting to do too much, and he's just got to temper himself and just stay within the team. And he's got plenty of weapons around him. I think for everything that was, a struggle. I thought the receivers played well. I thought Jaden Hazelwood looked really good. I thought Mike Woods looked good. I think Mario Williams looked good. Marvin Mims looked good. Even Brian Darby played a lot, and he looked good. So I think if that's one thing from an optimistic perspective that you take away from the game is that Oklahoma played, the receivers played much better than they have been in the past as well. So second half troubles on offense. Yeah, you're right. Oklahoma again struggled. There should not be a situation ever where Oklahoma scores 3 points and a half. I mean, it's just unacceptable. So whatever they need to do to fix that, have the killer instinct, put the foot on the gas, whatever that looks like, then they need to do that. You would think, Cameron, that they're going to get a little bit of the brunt of that frustration. It's not going to be I don't think it's going to be a happy week of practice for Oklahoma, without a doubt. Another question: how does anyone know Caleb would do better? Lincoln Riley sees them every day. Completely agree. I think he knows who's the best guy, and even how much Rattler had coming into this year. I think if Caleb Kelly was the better guy, he would play. And so, like I said, if this struggle continues, then yeah, absolutely, he could be a guy that's put in the game. But I think we'll see a much better Rattler moving forward, without a doubt. Massive letdown year after year. Yeah, let's see. It's just early on, but let's see how it goes. Yeah, I think at least early on that was a big bright spot. I think it was a little disappointing to see him make those 3 kicks over 50 and then miss the easy one. But yeah, I think he was excellent early on, but was really indicative of how the game went, specifically in the second half, that he made he made those kicks, those 50+ yarders, and then he struggled with the 30-something yarder, I believe it was. So, yeah, he was. I think that the special teams are going to continue to be a really big weapon for Oklahoma this year. Mental mistakes, non-focus issues. Yep, they'll get it corrected. First game, there's a lot of first game stuff. Um, a lot of first game stuff that they can correct as well. Uh, Typical Grinch ball. He won't be a great DC coach. We'll see. I don't know that I would go that far. Let's see how the rest of the season goes. I think he's done a miraculous job, honestly, Cheryl, in getting Oklahoma to where they were last year, from one of the worst defenses in the country to 29th overall. It was a little bit of a step back. I won't deny that, but let's see how they do the rest of the year. I think that's my battle cry is let's not say that the season's lost. Let's not say how horrible they are. Let's see, um, let's see, what that looks like. Um, yep, I think we will see. How do you win a ship without running back pushing each other from playing time? You don't. So, yeah, I'm not really completely understanding the question here. I think you answered your own question, but um, I think you'll see Eric Gray and Kennedy Brooks push each other all year. If you're talking about like additional depth behind those two guys pushing each other, then it's you'll have them to be able to play. But it's just it is what it is. They gotta play the cards that they're dealt right now. So I think you'll see Kennedy Brooks and Eric Gray continue to push each other all year, and Gray will get better. He was the better running back through camp, through spring and fall. That's why he started. But let's see what that looks like. I think he'll get better, and then they'll learn. I think the tape is going to be something that's going to be very, very intriguing for them. Watching that tape and just see how much they can get better, in 1 week. So. Yep, only team that looked good was Alabama. Consistently, yes, I would say they were consistently, obviously, the strongest team through the game. You're absolutely right, Cheryl, from beginning to end. Yeah, definitely know that you're a Buckeye fan, and Ohio State again. The inconsistency was there. Like C.J. Stroud did not play very well in the first half for Ohio State, but he played extremely well in the second half. So you'll get that with young players and then teams, and just early on, like I said, keep in mind some of these kids, they haven't played a game in 8 months. So um, when you don't play in 8 months and then you're playing every single week, that consistency is paramount for success, and they'll get better. I firmly believe that they will. Yeah, no, I agree. I think if it was a little bit more, the game was maybe a little bit more in doubt, that you would have seen Jaden Knowles, and I think also part of it, Cameron, was I think they saw exactly how bad their I think they saw exactly how bad the offensive line was playing, and didn't want to put some of those kids that didn't have as much experience in just yet. So. Looking at Georgia, they looked really good on the defensive side, but they struggled offensively. So you want to, I think we make sure that we're comparing apples and apples. I think we're going to say that Oklahoma struggled for periods of time uh, on both sides of the ball. Then that's fine, that's fair. But Georgia struggled offensively the entire game. Clemson struggled defensively or offensively the entire game. And as I said before, I completely get that they're playing a team that's not even on the same wavelength as Tulane's. But the fact that Oklahoma still scored 40 points, given how much they struggled and what the inconsistency was. But, Georgia and Clemson, neither of them scored an offensive touchdown. So always let's just make sure that we have the context and put that into consideration as well. Um, definitely. Let's see. Yep, agreed. I think Oklahoma will be fine. No, no reason to concern. No reason for concern. Yeah, I think that's one thing to see, Cameron, what the defensive back rotation looks like, for the remainder of the season, specifically this week. Do some of those younger kids maybe get a little bit more time? I think there was just a lot of inconsistency there. I think Woody Washington, he seemed to play pretty well. And again, I don't know if it was another situation where they subbed guys in too much, and they struggled. I'm going to have to go back and watch the tape a little bit more. But yeah, I think you could see some of those younger kids get in there if some of the older kids or the more experienced kids get an opportunity as well. Let's see here. See if we have any more questions. No, I don't see any other questions. So here. So if you guys have any more, so I got the truth in here again. Thanks for coming in, man. I appreciate you. Brooks is the better of the two. I think he looked better. I definitely agree. Yeah, great patience and vision. That's his best quality, obviously, and he's, I think, faster than you think. So I think he's he's a kid that's going to be counted on. You know what you get, and like I said, I think Eric Gray wasn't bad, but he certainly wasn't as patient as Kennedy Brooks as well. So let's see. Yeah, Williams looked good. Blah, blah, blah. So just some comments about the receivers there. Yeah, I think they all were fine. I think there was some situations where Mike Woods and Rattler wasn't necessarily on the same page, but I thought Mario Williams was good. I thought Marvin Mims was excellent. Yeah, we'll see. They have an opportunity to continue to get better for sure, as well. So, yeah, okay. So just wanted to have this for you guys. We'll go ahead and shut it down now. Like I said, I'll be live with Mark Wednesday, 11:30 Central, and then we'll start to preview a little bit more. We'll have some stuff from the coaches, some intel, and then I think we will. We'll preview Western Carolina a little bit, and then obviously we'll have the Western Carolina pregame show with a 6 o'clock kickoff. We'll have that at 4 p.m. and go up until about 5:15, and then immediately following the game, we'll do some the Boomer breakdown as well. So thanks everybody for joining. You guys have a great Sunday and a great Labor Day Monday ahead. Thanks, guys.